It's a lot harder to be about it than to talk about it. But what often falls apart and keeps folks from bridging that gap is just the tension of not knowing where to start. So let's talk about it. What's up with it, y'all? My name is Trevor Went. I'm an experiential artist based in Chocolate City, Washington, D.C., and I make art to challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And we are in the second episode of my creative breakdown of my latest series, Niggas in Nature. There are plenty of spaces on the YouTube platform where folks are talking about how to do stuff technically, how to use this lens and light this way and this, that, and the third. But what about creative inspiration? Where do we draw those sorts of things from? And so what I want to do is fill the gap and kind of help folks to tell better stories and create art and bodies of work and kind of break down how somebody might be thinking about those things and how I think about those things. So let's chop it up, y'all. I want to talk in this episode about how I brought Niggas in Nature to life from concept to actual reality. So I'm gonna break this joint down into 6 steps. So the first step into taking a project from concept to creation is to do nothing. No, I'm serious, do nothing. I absolutely did nothing in the beginning. I allowed the inspiration to hit me. I lived and experienced and peeped other art and just kept Niggas in Nature in the back of my mind before it was even called Niggas in Nature, when it was just some visuals. And somewhere in there, a spark hit me and I began to become curious about some stuff. And I allowed that curiosity to grow and flower. And then that's how we got here, right? Like, I knew I wanted more Niggas in Nature, but I didn't know, like, I didn't go out there and go out on this trip to shoot from that angle and create from that angle. I just wanted to go live. And then this project found me. In the beginning, I just went because I had planned on, and I'll talk about this on my Patreon, the true backstory. But basically, some stuff fell through on another trip I was trying to do. But I was trying to figure out, okay, this was actually like my 30th birthday trip. And I was trying to figure out what to do. And then I started seeing some visuals on Instagram from Joe and Maddie Greer. And they were on a West Coast road trip type situation, shooting. Film photos were coming up. I'm seeing visuals of spaces that I've been before, like Grand Teton National Park and this, that, and the third. And I'm just getting like so inspired. I'm just like, man, I am itching to see visuals like that again. I'm itching to see spaces like that again. And so all I wanted to do was go out with no agenda and make what I wanted to make. Just shoot how I wanted to shoot, go alone, see what shook. See what came to be from that. And I made a short little, route on that I wanted to go on, and I just shot and I just experienced and kind of dealt with the weather conditions as they were and whatever else and just did my thing. And then as I was back and just living and waiting to see what would develop from this project, if something would develop into a project from this, I saw this video that was a short film from Jansen Powers, an incredible cinematographer and director that I've followed for a long time, whose work I've followed for a really long time, and it was called Built From Within. And I'll put a link up here about that for y'all to go watch that. But that joint was so interesting in the way that he connected still frames. Like, it was video. They were just tripoded frames for the most part with a little bit of movement, but there was just a beauty of how he connected like soundscapes into that as well. And it incorporates an Ansel Adams interview, and whoever was doing the score and the mixing and sound design for that joint just did an incredible job. And that joint really moved me. And that was where stuff really started for me, of trying to take inspiration from a concept like that and build upon it and incorporate it into my own thing. And that kind of gives me a space that I want to talk about real fast in this, a kind of caveat. A lot of times in this age, in this content era, you see a lot of people just straight up copying niggas' work. You just see people they just gonna straight up take something that someone else has made or and call it their own, or say I'm inspired by this, and just literally they're just making that person's work in their own formula. And that's not inspiration, that's plagiarism. That's just theft. What inspiration looks like is to look at someone else's work and then embody it your own. One of the things I see all the time is with Basquiat. You see so many people that are just Basquiat mimics, that aren't expanding upon Basquiat's style, that aren't influencing Basquiat, like using Basquiat's influence into their own kind of repertoire of their own style and defining it and making it their own. It's just like carbon copy Basquiat. One person I feel like does it well, I think his name's Malik Roberts. I think his joint is Malik Roberts Art. Like, you can clearly see that there's Basquiat influence in his stuff, but it's his own very unique style that incorporates all sorts of forms and mediums that Basquiat wasn't making stuff in. So it's like, okay, inspiration can hit, but don't just, oh, I'm gonna make my own Good Kid, Mad City. I'm gonna make my own To Pimp a Butterfly. It's like utilizing those things as inspiration points, but then expanding beyond it so that, yeah, someone might be able to see, oh, I see where you got that sort of, like, I can see that you were inspired by this, but not that you just take and make your own version of it and then call it your own. That's just theft. And it's just crusty. We already got that. Like, there's only one you. Be the best you can be. Stop tripping. So number 2, honor your curiosity. Once that spark had hit me, I started researching about the idea of Black folks in nature. I started looking at my footage and kind of seeing how I wanted to move with it, how I wanted to color grade it. And so then from there, I'm learning from the historical side about stats of why we aren't in these spaces and how that happened that we weren't in these spaces. What sort of systems of oppression are at play? There are always systems of oppression at play when we're talking about this country. And so those are things that I'm thinking about. And then I talked about in episode 1 how I had this conversation with Ma Dukes and started hearing out how her childhood connected to this nature thing. And so I'm honoring the curiosity by, okay, I've got an idea going. Now let's do the deeper research. Now let's build upon that. Now let's explore this idea. It's kind of like in English class where they make you free write in the beginning, but then when you look back at the free writing, you find something in there. You're like, oh, this over here, this stuff is not working, but this little piece right here might be something to build off of. And so it's honoring that little piece that you can build off of and continuing to build from there. And so that's what I started doing with that and that. So that brings me to number 3, establish your goal. For me, my goal was I want more of my niggas out in nature, right? Like, I want more of y'all niggas out here experiencing this stuff. And so I want to inspire y'all niggas to go visit these parks, go experience these spaces, go and see all this, but also hold the nuance and tension of why we ain't out here like that. And to kind of put people on game, put us on game on like why we aren't here, but how we can then overcome those things. Because I feel like it's the education in those spaces that can break down the barriers that kept us from those spaces in the first place. Because if it's just, oh, there's just a wall of that's white people shit, that's not for us, whoop-de-whoop, of course, we ain't gonna really experience some spots, because you have to consciously consider, why do I think like that? To be able to break that wall that sits in front of something that's just common practice. It's just the norm of what you experience and kind of walk through growing up. And so then number 4, you gotta trust that the concept is gonna come, because if you do that work, if your body and mind and creativity are all working and connecting and putting things together, your idea is going to come. Your concept is gonna build. One of my professors used to always talk about let creativity find you working. She used to say that she didn't believe in the equivalent of writer's block for photographers, because you can always just go pick up a camera and walk out and go shoot. You don't need to have an idea in the beginning. You just need to go shoot. And it's that. It's as these engines are moving and things are turning over, that's when the creativity is gonna hit you. That's when the sparks are gonna hit you. That's when your ideas are gonna flow. If you are stuck, shoot, learn, watch things, do things to get your creativity and get your juices flowing. And then from there, your concept will develop. So do the work and let the results fall as they may. And that's funny because that brings up number 5, do the work. So for me, I established what I needed for this project. I started writing because writing was a piece of it. I had to write the scripts. So I'm writing and building out what those scripts are going to look like and what's the conversation format going to look like. And then I defined the roles, which was me and the homie. And so then writing out the scripts for what we needed to do then. Then I also knew that I had to edit the visuals. So I kind of formed my process of how I was going to do that, which was a little bit different than what I usually do. I edited for color first and then, edited the actual pieces together after it. So I started editing the photos and the videos before anything else when it came to the actual visual production within that. And then I allowed the editing and the sonic idea to develop through all of these processes. And so then, I'm taking pieces of what I thought I might want to do from the Jansen Powers thing, and I ended up going a completely different direction. And then I kind of continued to build on the sonic space and kind of built a framework of what I wanted to come together. But then I also allowed for stuff to have some nuance and have, some different appearances than what I might have initially expected when it came down to actually recording stuff with the homie, to allow space of improv so that we could get natural reactions and things like that. And then I started planning. So then from there, I planned out when I wanted stuff to drop and how long it was going to take me to edit and how to get folks together for it. And it was kind of tough in the beginning because I knew that I wanted another person involved in the process, and then he was really busy. The person I had on it, the producer, Tayshawn Jackson, who's often collaborator with me for those who know my work. I was kind of back and forth. I tried to come up with a solution that was like, okay, well, if you record some vocals, then I can use like an AI software to change my voice to sound like yours and just play both parts in the conversation. And I tried that and I didn't like it. I didn't like how it felt. I didn't like how it sounded. It was just like, there was just so many reasons why it didn't make sense, and I didn't want to continue down that road. I wanted the actual natural thing. And so me and him ended up getting together and then putting in the work on that. And so I had to put in the work. I had to put in the work on the editing and put in the work on the sound design and learn new concepts, learn the different things that I needed to do to execute my stuff. And then once all that was together, do everything that it took to execute the plan that I made, because you build all this stuff doing the work of creating your plan. Now you got to execute. There's nothing that is going to substitute the work. Like at the end of the day, you're going to have to put the work in. It's like Kendrick said, put your head down and work like I do, but understand everybody ain't going to like you. It's like you have to put the work in. So, and honestly, one thing I want to put before this and kind of back into that do the work segment is that once you plan out what you need to do to execute the project, then from there, you also need to plan out how you're going to share the project, how you're going to market out the project, how you're going to put that in front of people. Because there's a cat named Marcus Hollinger, used to be the creative director. What was Marcus's role? No, I think he was the VP of marketing at Reach Records. And Marcus and I were DMing on Instagram at one point a couple years ago. And I was talking about how I learned a lot from how they rolled out albums. And he said, that's the key. How you release something is just as, if not more important, of what you've made. It's one of those things to keep in mind of you should be considering how you're going to distribute this and share it with the people. Hone those abilities and really create a timeline where you can execute flawlessly to the best of your ability so that your stuff can be displayed as best as possible, right? Number 6, and the final one. Once all this stuff is done, once you execute the project, once all these things are done, you gotta celebrate the win. Celebrating the win is something that I'm learning to do now, and I still need to do with this project because I want to get the parts of the folks who've been a part of this piece together to walk through this and really celebrate it. But yeah, mark the moment in history. Celebrate what you've done. Celebrate all the work that you did to make it come together and honor the project in that way. And then also, take some time to breathe from it and reflect, because like you can always be on to the next one, but most of your life is lived in the process. It's lived in the journey. It's not lived in the accomplishment to the destination. And so in those moments of the destination, you gotta take some time to soak them things in. Mark those moments in history. Don't just sit there. Don't just stay there. You can't just stay in the accomplishment. You'll never move on to the next thing. But there is something about creating space for this moment holding it, honoring it, putting that away, keepsaking it, and then moving on to the next thing. So overall, I knew the feeling that I wanted to create with this project. And that feeling was something that drove me as I was trying to figure out what this thing looked like. I wanted to create this dichotomy of something that was so familiar for, you know, us as niggas chilling on the block, chilling with the homies, chilling in the neighborhood, chilling on the porch, whatever. Something that felt like I'm just posted up with a homie chopping it up. And then kind of make that dichotomy of this nature that was, for many of us, so unfamiliar. And so how do I bridge that gap of not only making something that's so contrasty, so contradictory in ways, and make it all work together? And so somehow I needed to figure out how to connect that joint, and I found it in the end. And that happened through the work, that happened through discovery, that happened through trial and error. And then somehow these things that are intention, I needed to make work. And it's like, in musically, from what I've read on the internet, this can be called biphonic, or this can be called dualistic. It's like creating that space where you have these contrasting sounds, but they're still like, they still resonate together. They still work together somehow. And so that's what I really wanted to do with this, and the feeling that I wanted to create here. That familiarity also kind of laying the groundwork to see this thing that's unfamiliar and to draw me towards it, to draw my niggas towards it. So when we talk about me as an experiential artist, like every major body of work that I create these days, I'm considering how can this translate into something that could show up experientially, something that could show up physically. And so I began with this concept in the early stages of this, of pitching this project to the National Park Service, because I know that the National Park Service is trying to get more Black folks into these parks because they look at the statistics and they're bad, and they did those studies. You know, it's like 7% of the niggas that go to parks, or the 7% of the people that go to parks every year is us, is niggas. And they know why, because they've done 2 big studies on why and how they was some racists. And so I began with that sort of concept of building out a project, like building out a campaign that could draw more Black folks to national parks. And then that expanded to maybe a campaign with some other company, because I want to still call this Niggas in Nature, because that's how I want to, that's the name of the project. That's what I want to do. And so then the title was something that I was kind of refusing to change and reshape into someone else's thing. And so then I shifted to the idea of a sponsored art experience. And that's how that developed versus doing some sort of campaign. And maybe, I don't know, maybe seeing the work of the art experience or seeing the work of the project that exists on social right now might compel someone to think, oh, this person could be a good person to put behind the wheels behind doing a campaign that could be called something completely different, but still hold the roots of trying to get more of us into these spaces, which I would be open for. But I definitely know that Niggas in Nature, like, that's mine. And that's what that needs to look like. And it needs to show up the way that I wanted it to show up and the way that it did. And so maybe it becomes a campaign one day, but the heart of it, the thing that I'm doing right now, and how that expands into an art experience, like, that ish ain't finna change. And so I have ideas of what an art experience can develop and look like, and how I would, take over a space or utilize a space to show this work. But I'm gonna save those ideas until that happens, because I can't be giving out the secret sauce on this joint like that. But that's it, y'all. That's episode 2, talking about how I brought this project, Niggas in Nature, from the vision, from the concept to creation. So I'll catch y'all on episode 3, where we are going to talk about sound and color. We're going to talk about storytelling through these contrasting visuals and these contrasting sonic soundscapes that I created with this project. So I'll catch y'all on the flip. Be easy, be safe. Peace.